It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm still trapped in an endless void of absolutely nothing. Well, nothing and an endless supply of isekai. And for new viewers, before you worry that this is some massive continuity you'll get lost in, no, these opening gags kinda change on a whim. Well, usually about this point something would smack into me and I'd make some snarky jab in resignation. Speak of the devil, what's this? Oh damn, you poor thing. Just how long have you been lost here? You're practically covered in cobwebs since no one's bothered to talk about you in so long. There. I'll just put you out of your misery then. With a video, talking about industry trends, history, and building an ever-sprawling web of isekai as far back as the eye can see in the anime sphere. And today's series is about as far back as one would think to go for isekai. Well, besides Digimon, I guess. Before Sword Art Online was asking, but what if trapped in a video game though? This one had already explored the concept in a much deeper and more introspective way. That's right, we're looking at the forgotten gem of the early 2000s, Dot Hack Sign. Starting as an anime and not a web novel, fucking got you this time, Dot Hack launched in April of 2002. As a multimedia franchise, the idea for this originally hit with an anime going to air, while a video game series launched shortly thereafter to tie into the same setting with different characters. Talk about some vision, because the first thing that comes to my mind when watching an anime about characters coping with anxiety, escapism, and a whole host of other psychological and sociological problems is, wow, I really can't wait to play a shitty RPG pretending to be an MMO. So April hits, the Dot Hack anime airs, getting people pumped for the new VR MMO shit, and in June the Dot Hack video games for the PlayStation 2 started trickling onto the market, bundled with an OVA series to tie the quote-unquote offline story together. And to clarify, the games and OVAs take place after the initial anime. We can thank CyberConnect 2 for that clusterfuck of a continuity, and we're just at the first entry. It gets more convoluted the deeper you go, and holy hell is that saying something. With a commercial success on their hands, the franchise spins on to this day with a ton more video games, a ton less anime, and an actual MMO, which you think would have been the main focus since, the series is about an MMO. The first wave of Dot Hack, named Project Dot Hack, carried manga adaptations, light novelizations, and tapped into just about every media it could sink its fangs into, with the game selling over 1.7 million copies. The anime itself received largely positive reviews and was a staple of the early to mid-2000s Adult Swim lineup in the US, which is where a lot of the English-speaking fans found the series. It's kind of a classic anime. So, Dot Hack Sign. It's an isekai, right? Well, not to purists. But let's run down the trope list and see where we get. We've got a dude, put a big question mark around that, in another world called The World. Though this one is virtual, I'll give you that. That raises the question of, is the character actually in another world if that world is just digital information in this one? Well, he's trapped there with amnesia, feels pain, and can't log out from the game. Yeah, that's in another world, whether you want to be pedantic about it or not. The person there is experiencing it in all its glory, from a locked first-person perspective. But how did he get there? That's the big question. A god or some other mysterious circumstances? Well, kind of. Look, the internet in this anime is weird, and the corruption of data bleeds into the real world and such, so modifying code can impact people's physical being. A sort of ghost in the machine that can do almost anything sets all this into motion, trapping the main character in this world so he can do something specific. I think that nails down the character trope pretty well. Other world, transported there, and done so by a god-type entity. But what about the setting? We've got our standard fantasy thing going on. I mean, it's a JRPG, so that means magic, parties, class roles, and the anime version of MMOs, where there's little to no moderation and the community takes that up on their own. So a pseudo-society's sort of formed. But I will say, where most isekai have their dude going to this world and starting from scratch, the main character here is coming in as a character she played in that world, and is already sort of familiar with the systems in it. There's really no learning curve. And since he's in this world, he has the amazing power granted to him of being an MMO character, meaning he can cast spells and do whatever he wants with how much care besides, annoying the people around him. But besides that, the OP power he has is a guardian creature that can one-shot other players. And that's both cool and terrifying, since it hurts the players in real life. But also, he doesn't have a ton of control over it either, so there's a theme with a dark power barely controlled and a mysterious protagonist sort of deal. But he's also not exactly playing by the same rules the rest of the player cast is, able to move servers and get to hidden areas others cannot. So that's it. We've got our characters sent to another place with the world centering itself around them, and the added bonus of a group of mostly hot girls backing them up. Yeah, that's an isekai right there. The impact of this series is wide felt in anime, but less so in the actual isekai genre itself. And I get it, there's a big thing I'm sure that springs to most people's minds. So let's address the elephant in the room, I guess. Comparing this to one of the big-time trend blasters of isekai, Sword Art Online, that comes off as a downright ripoff. Both series contain a massively popular deep dive VR MMO, both have people trapped inside the game, and both tackle living and coping with life in these new worlds. Clearly someone's been copying some homework. But is that fair? Hell, is it even true? On paper, Sword Art Online was released as a light novel in 2009, 7 years after .hack aired on television and 4 years after the video games were wrapped up. But that's the light novel. The web novel the author originally started publishing in 2002, and sources have the concept for that beginning in 2001. Is it fair to say .hack was the direct inspiration? Certainly not, with a massive time gap in the two being so removed from one another in scale. The video games were certainly under development for years before their release, and Araki wasn't exactly making massive waves with SAO when he first started publishing it on his personal website. At least not big enough to be noticed by a massive publisher, let alone for his own benefit. Remember that whole taking 7 years to get picked up for a light novel adaptation? Yeah. So we can't even suggest that he inspired this. The games and anime storylines impact one another, so the anime's story would have been something set in stone fairly early in production to account for the game's development. And that's ignoring the general sentiment around that time. With the advent of the internet coming off the laughable Y2K scare where computers would ruin the world, and a clear vision that online gaming would be huge. From there, the deep dive VR elements borrowed from science fiction implies that the two stories just happen to share some key features by coincidence. And while that's not satisfying, that's the most likely case. For anime itself, this was probably one of the more thought-provoking series early fans got their hands on. Today, it's mostly viewed as a relic of the past, and probably a decent nostalgia trip for fans. But when it aired, it was certainly something different. It's not often anime, especially mainstream stuff, will get so introspective and delve into the ideas of identity and online versus real life. That seems commonplace today, but in the early 2000s when the internet was still in its early days, not really hitting the cultural impact it has today, that was cutting edge and borderline sci-fi stuff. And for that, it's definitely a unique series. Especially with how little action this series has, as it's mostly just people talking. But damn if it isn't topical and relevant to today's discourse. You know, with the blending between online and reality. .hack is a classic. I say that in retrospect, catching it on television when I was growing up and even playing the PS2 games when they were coming out. But as an isekai anime, it's not something that immediately jumps to mind. Mostly because it doesn't fit the exact mold of what we think of as isekai today. But that doesn't mean it isn't one, as it utilizes the key aspects of such a show. The question then boils down to, where do you draw the line? And for me, I'd say it is, if only to add some much needed depth to the isekai pool. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and do all the other YouTube stuff to help the channel grow. You can also join my Discord with the link down in the description, and if you really want to support me, you can head on over to my Patreon and pick up some extra perks, like voting on what I do next. Thanks for watching.